go about changing the way that they think. You know,
Yes.
it's like, because most of us, we have, 60,000, they say, separate thoughts every day.
Yeah.
60,000. But the problem is we have the same 60,000 we had yesterday, and we're going to have the same 60,000 again tomorrow. And we just keep repeating the same thoughts. And none of us ever ask the important questions like, is what I'm thinking true? Because the thought that it's going to be difficult to do something, for example, or it's going to be complicated, or it's going to take a long time, or it's a struggle, that usually, if you really examine that, there's no truth in that whatsoever.
So I'm talking to Dr. Wayne Dyer, who's really the father of the spiritual movement as we know it in our time. A lot of people call you the father of motivation, but when I was talking to you, you weren't just a motivational speaker. You were trying back in 1978 when I first
Was it 78? I thought it was 76. I used to fly up to Baltimore every time there was a...
Yes, and talk to you when I was doing that little show called People Are Talking with Richard Scher. And we'd start talking about these ideas, which really started to open me up in a way that I'd never experienced before. What was the moment, the spiritual moment, and I use, the word spiritual carefully here. What was that moment that got you to see your own life differently, that opened you up?
I know exactly the moment. I know the date, the time.
Okay, tell me.
It was 1974, and I grew up in a series of foster homes and orphanages and so on, as you know. My father walked out on us.
Yes.
He just abandoned us. He never paid any support. He just had 3 boys. My mother had 3 boys under the age of 4 before she was 23 years old, and she was just left. There was a depression. I was born in 1940. My brothers were born in 38 and 36, and I carried around deep anger and deep resentment and deep hatred. I dreamt every night. Rage is a good word, because at night I would wake up and I would be sweating, and I would meet him in a bar someplace, and I would be hitting because he was an alcoholic and so on. And but I never was able to find him. I ended up in Biloxi, Mississippi, at his grave through a series of just the most bizarre circumstances. I rented a car.
That weren't coincidences.
Yes, exactly. And I was sent to get rid of this rage inside of me, because I knew that I came here to do something great. I knew that. I knew that when I was a little boy. I knew I could talk kids out of being upset at what was going on in the orphanage, for example. They always, when everybody would show up, they'd always say, "Where's Wayne? Go get them." And whoever it was, a little girl would be crying, and I'd say, "This is the greatest place in the world. There's no parents. You're going to love this place." And that's what I would just try to take the attention off of what they were, their anger and their fear and so on. So I always knew this. So I get to my father's grave. I didn't even know he was dead up until just a few months before, and his body had been shipped there. And when I went to the grave and I stood there at his grave, I finally said, from this moment on, this was after 3 hours of just stomping on the ground, I said, from this moment on, I send you love. From this moment on, I will no longer have any resentment or hatred or bitterness towards you at all. I never dreamt about this man again. I feel his presence very, very frequently. From that moment on, I quit drinking. Alcohol was no longer a part of my life. I lost the weight that I was, I changed my diet around. The right people began to show up in my life. And it was all about forgiveness, Oprah. It was just about, Mark Twain said that forgiveness is the fragrance the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. And I understood it finally. I finally got that.
Say that again.
Forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it.
Oh, God, that makes me want to cry.
It's so poetic, it's so beautiful. And I have never had an angry thought towards him or towards anyone else since that time.
In Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao, Dr. Wayne Dyer's latest book, I think it was his 31 or 32 books, bestsellers, you say, for my father, Melvin Lyle Dyer, even though I've never known you, after thoroughly digesting the Tao, I finally get it! Exclamation point. It is and always was all perfect. I love you.
And I feel him now. I feel him right here with us now.
How was it always perfect when he essentially abandoned you? How was that perfect for people who are listening? We're talking to Dr. Wayne Dyer about his latest book, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. And he lived for a solid year
Live the Tao every day.
Live the Tao every day. How was it perfect?
It's perfect because it taught me the most important thing that we have to learn on this planet. It's about forgiveness. If you don't have something to forgive, in the Course in Miracles, it says if if you haven't blamed, then there's no need to forgive.
Yeah.
So once you get rid of blame, once you get rid of your hostility, so in order for me to be able to get to a place where I could teach people about how to go through their life without bitterness and anger and tension and fear and hatred and all that stuff that we carry around because of the way other people treat us, I had to go through that experience myself. Everything that we went through in our life, we had to go through in order to get to this moment.
And that's why it was perfect.
It was absolutely perfect.
It was perfect for you.
Right.
I feel that way too. Being born where I was born, raised the way I was raised, everything, including the sexual abuse, the poverty, all of it, has made this moment possible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And therefore, it was perfect.
It was. I mean, I remember hearing you talk a couple of years ago, and you talked about your parents had sex one time?
One time.
One time in their whole life. One time.
In their whole life.
After. And you were the result of that.
She was wearing a poodle skirt, and he wanted to see what was under it, he said.
Is that right?
Yes. She was wearing a poodle skirt.
I remember those poodle skirts.
She was wearing a poodle skirt. It was a pink poodle skirt, and he said...
it was under a tree or something?
And he asked to take her home after school, and they stopped by an oak tree. I think it's why I love oaks so much. I just am obsessed with oak trees. Don't even know what it is, why I'm so drawn to them. But anyway, under a tree, and he said when he took her to my grandmother's house, her mother's home, that she still had the leaves on the back of the skirt because they forgot to brush all the leaves.
And she was young, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was 18 years old.
18 years old. Mm-hmm. And that one, now how could that be an accident?
An accident or a coincidence.
Is something that fits together perfectly.
Yes, I often think about, look at all the series of things could happen. It wasn't even like they were friends.
Mm.
They happened to be passing at the same moment. Mm. And he said, hey, girl, what if she hadn't come out of that door at that moment? You know?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. If 1 second later,
1 second later.
And that's why there's an organizing intelligence behind this, that's one of the things that
I know that's what you talk about in this book. Is the organized intelligence.
Yes, and organizing. Just think, I used to give the example of, just imagine for a second a junkyard. I mean, it's got 3 million pieces of junk, just strewn every place. Everything you can think of, old toilet seats. It's got wiring and just the old generators and
batteries.
And everything that you can think of. The whole 3 million of them. A wind comes along, a 200-mile-an-hour wind comes along and takes all of this junk and twirls it around, and it goes up into the air, and it's twirling around in the air of this, this cyclone that goes by. The cyclone passes, and all the junk comes back down to the ground, and there's a Boeing 747, where it was just a field of junk before. What is the likelihood of something like that happening? 1 billion to 1, 1 trillion to 1? Could it ever happen? It takes an organizing intelligence to take all of these things and bring it together. And a Boeing 747 is nothing compared to a human being or compared to the universe, compared to all of those stuff. To think that this all is something that just happened because it was some happenstance accident, there is something called the Tao. And it says the Tao does nothing, but it leaves nothing undone. Those
who are listening and hearing about this for the first time, and there are a lot of people actually hearing this philosophy for the first time, is Tao more of is it a religion, would you say? Is it a lifestyle?
Lao Tzu.
Rules for living?
Lao Tzu hated rules. And if you were to call Taoism a religion to Lao Tzu, he would have laughed at you. He would have nothing to do with it.
Because it's not a religion.
It had nothing to do with religion. He had anything that had to do with rules of conduct and how to run your life. What he said about rules and laws and so on is that if you need rules and you need laws in order to be a moral person, then you're not connected to the Tao. I know, but when I read that, I thought, well, oh my God, we're going to have anarchy. It would be craziness. It would be heresy. It would be if we don't have rules. The anchor of the universe is located in every single one of us. Your children know what to do. One of my favorite things to say to my children always was, when they would ask, should I do this? What should I do? What time should I come in? My favorite response always was, you know what to do. You know within you the right thing to do. You know whether or not that you should come in this late or that late. You know whether you should eat that or not eat that. You don't need me to tell you that. It's about non-interference. It's about seeing the anchor of the universe is located in every one of us. I'm not talking about, there would be anarchy if some of us read it and then others don't read it, and then they begin to, impose it on other people. But if everyone understood that there's no concept of enemy, that we all come from the same place, and the 40th verse of the Tao, it says that the way of Tao is a return trip. We are all coming back. T.S. Eliot's favorite